So, hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on this webinar on higher study options in England, focusing on land-based pathways. This webinar is brought to you by Plumpton College and its collaborative partner, the University of Greenwich. I'm Mimi Neathling-Taylor, the Director of Higher Education at Plumpton College. We're a specialist land and environment-based college located about 15 minutes from Brighton and about 30 minutes from Gatwick International Airport. It's lovely to host this webinar for you all today, joining us from the Republic of Ireland. So I'm really excited to talk about the opportunities for specifically Irish students looking to study in England. In today's session, we'll be looking at different institutions and opportunities around specifically land-based higher education. And land-based in this context for today includes those subject areas such as agriculture, agri-food industries, animal behaviour, zoology, animal conservation and behaviour and welfare, veterinary nursing, physiotherapy, rural land management, sustainable horticulture, wine production, wine business studies, viticulture and oenology. So a whole plethora of land-based subjects as well. And I'll give you an overview of the different types of higher option pathways available in England, and also look at flexible modes of study delivery. So versus your traditional full-time on-campus options, what other options are there open to Irish students? And we'll also look into entry criteria and myth busting around UCAS application process, which I know can be quite a daunting process for students to navigate through. So thank you for your time today. Like I said, any questions, just pop them in those Q&A boxes. That'd be very helpful. Right, so opportunities in England. So I'll go through some of the information which I appreciate some of you may already be familiar with, but for the sake of completeness, I have just included a reminder here about, how students are able to, from the Republic of Ireland, study higher education in England. So importantly, the common travel arrangement, common travel area arrangement, CTA as it's known, gives Irish citizens the right to access higher education and training in England, and also associated support such as student loan support. So if an Irish student meets the residency criteria, they can study in the UK for the same rate of fees as home students. That's really important. So they won't be charged international fees. They can also apply for tuition, for a student tuition fee loan in the UK, but really importantly, they don't have access to a maintenance grant through student loans companies. But in some cases, students and Irish students are eligible for the Irish government maintenance grant to study in the UK. So it's really important to make those two distinctions, that yes, Irish students, if they pass the residency criteria, can apply for a student tuition fee loan in the UK, but they won't have access to the maintenance part of that. So it is important to ensure that the learners are aware of what funding they can access prior to making the decision to study in England. English higher education can be very expensive in terms of tuition fees charged. We know there is a 3% increase that most English higher education institutions will be applying from September. So it is important that learners have the option of applying and have access to that tuition fee loan. The majority of English students have access to student loans, and they all apply for a student loan to cover their tuition fees when studying in the UK. So it is quite a common thing here to do. But it's important to look into financial aspects of how you will cover both tuition fees and also just cost of living if you're considering studying in England. And we realise that many learners are aware of big universities such as Oxford, Cambridge and the Russell Group universities, who are renowned, of course, for their research activities. But some learners may not realise the vast range of other institutions that also offer higher education, specifically those in the land-based sector. So in England, higher education is regulated by the Office for Students, and colleges such as Plumpton College deliver undergraduate and postgraduate degrees. So Plumpton specifically specialise in land and environmental subjects such as viticulture, vet, physio and rural land management. But there are about 36 other land-based specialist providers within England alone, and others include Sparshall College, Hartpury, Masco, and there's a lot dotted around England, so either in the southeast where we are located, close to Brighton, or others more centrally within kind of central areas of England. Many colleges offer unique packages to students from the Republic of Ireland, such as accommodation packages, discounts on tuition fees, and more. So it really is worth looking into this. We at Plumpton, again, we offer discounted accommodation and also free return shuttles from Gatwick Airport once a term. So there's really different options available to students who are looking to study in the UK, or specifically England. And what makes colleges a unique option is there is many reasons. Okay, so we're mostly located in rural areas, but also have access to unique facilities, so including commercial farms, clinical veterinary suites, hydrotherapy pools, and at Plumpton we even have a working winery and laboratories where students gain first-hand experience in making wine, through all the way from working in the vineyards through to working in a scientific lab. So there is really a lot of opportunities if you're looking at rural land-based education, specifically at colleges in England. Colleges also offer a more bespoke learning environment as opposed to a big university. And while some learners might find a big city university more attractive, they can become lost kind of within a big crowd. We know different types of learners do want to either go into a big city, but some choose not to and would prefer a more rural location and smaller class sizes. And we feel that some learners are simply not aware of the options available to them outside of the big names. So they're thinking, oh, I don't even want to consider studying in England because it's all these big, scary universities. And that's not the case. So most colleges that offer land-based pathways are validated by a big university, and this is really important. So while you might not recognise Plumpton as a name out there, our validating organisation is the University of Greenwich. So what that means for students is that they come and join us here. They will study and get all their tuition right here on our campus, but when they actually get their degree award at the end of the day, it will say the University of Greenwich or whichever university that college is attached to. So it gives them that international recognition. So that is really another reason why you should consider potentially joining a rural land-based higher education institution. So it is really important to make learners aware of just different types of institutions, because not one size fits all, as the saying goes. So I'll move on to some courses and delivery modes next. In terms of when it comes to specific pathways and specific different kind of models and how that is delivered, we found that students, but particularly parents and carers, are not familiar with the differences, but specifically in terms of foundation degrees versus bachelor degrees, and then there's the foundation year dilemma as opposed to foundation degrees, and what this all means in that sphere. So many colleges offer foundation degrees in England. So what this is essentially is the first 2 years of your full 3-year bachelor degree honours programme. So once you've completed year 1 and year 2 of your foundation degree, which is equivalent to year 1 and year 2 of your bachelor honours degree, you then have that degree, and it's often called a foundation degree, a FdSc, as we like to call it, a foundation degree. You can then opt to top up and do a third and final BSc honours year. So this will give you 2 degrees. So essentially you'll have your, if I can use an example, a foundation degree in applied animal behaviour and conservation, and then you can do a top up, and if you're successful and you've completed your dissertation in your honours here, you'll have your BSc honours in applied zoology and animal conservation. So you can mix and match. You can do a foundation degree and then choose to top up. Some of our veterinary nursing students do their foundation degree in veterinary nursing, and then they choose to top up as well. So I hope that makes sense. Importantly, a foundation degree is not the same as a foundation year. So some of the bigger universities have been guilty in offering students courses which includes a foundation year, which means an extra year to qualify to the full degree. So a foundation degree, it's really important that students take note of this. A foundation degree is essentially an introduction to year, where learners will cover again the basics, say for example in anatomy and physiology, before they start the official first year of, say, their vet physio degree. So if you're advising learners, please look at what the university is offering in terms of the level of entry. So your foundation year is often termed as your year 0, and then your first official year starts at year 1. So that there is just that nuanced difference in terms of a foundation degree and a foundation year. And a foundation degree is a degree in its own right, really important. Moving on to delivery options, we again at Plumpton are in a fortunate position, well, perhaps more institutions in England, that since COVID, we've been able to adapt delivery models and styles and what we offer learners. A lot of higher education providers are offering learners more flexibility in terms of attendance, some offering block delivery options or a blend of online and on campus. This has also come in response to more and more students absolutely having to work while they study due to the financial impact and the current financial climate that we live in. So to allow students that flexibility that they're not going to be in class every day, Monday to Friday, but actually what are the options around attendance? Again, we have a very attractive example here at Plumpton in terms of veterinary physiotherapy. This degree is essentially an online course. Students as far as Singapore will fly in and attend for 1 week at a time, 4 times a year. That 1 week is really intensive. You get all your practical, your equine and your canine veterinary physiotherapy practical training during those block weeks, which is very intensive. And then you fly out again, and you can sit in the comfort of your own home and attend the online sessions or catch up in your own time. So other models include what we call your typical block release models, where students will be on campus typically 1 day a week, and then the rest they can either be in work and on-the-job training, a bit like an apprenticeship model as well. So more and more universities are offering flexibility in terms of compacted timetables, where you attend 2 to 3 days full-time on campus and really intense days. But again, this allows learners that flexibility to allow working around their studies. We always advise learners to ask about timetables and what this typically looks like. So if you're going to advise anybody, say, ask, how many days am I expected to go into university? How many days am I actually going to be in class or in the lab or in the farm? What does this entail? So we will see more and more flexible options as time goes by, but certainly a lot of things to look into in terms of what models are available. In terms of entry criteria in applying for UCAS, we certainly think the biggest hurdles for some learners are understanding the entry criteria in England and simply the application process. Trust me, even those of us who have been advising learners for decades still have a nightmare when it comes to entry criteria. And there's no one-stop-fits-all or easy way to explain it. It literally takes time. And we consider each learner's entry criteria on a case-by-case basis. But thankfully, UCAS is getting better. And they have now also included Irish leaver certificates within their calculator. I haven't included the link on the screen, but I will do afterwards. There's a very handy, you can just type into Google UCAS tariff calculator and it comes up, and you can type in there your actual Irish higher grade average that you got and the points that equates to. So each university, and this is really important, will have their own entry criteria, which technically should be roughly the same across the board, but in some cases simply aren't. So most foundation degrees will start around 64 UCAS points, and for your bachelor degrees, will start at anything from 109 upwards. But as an example, we would normally expect somebody to demonstrate, firstly, proficiency in English language, and maths at high school level. So this is your English GCSE level 2. And then they must have the minimum required UCAS tariff points in a related subject, very important, related subject at level 3. So our English A levels or BTECs, that's your level 3, which is your Leavers Higher certificates. Typically, an H1 gets you 36 points on UCAS, at H2 30, at H3 24, and at H4 18 points. And if you want to think it in terms of A levels, typically the typical university will ask you for 3 A levels, and a leaving certificates subject at honours level is approximately equivalent to 2/3 of an A level. So most universities will ask you for 5 hires basically at honours level to get across those 3 A levels. But if you use the UCAS tariff points calculator, it gives you a better indication. And there's a combination that they'll ask for as well. So you either need 5 H3s or 4 H4s and 1 H3s. The whole combination kind of shifts and moves, but importantly in a related subject. So, you know, for somebody who wants to do veterinary science, science is important, and psychology is a social science and not a science. So there are slight nuances there as well. I am going to move on because I am conscious of time. So for the majority of cases, you must apply via UCAS. And UCAS is, of course, universities and colleges admission system. On the screen, you can see kind of what that looks like. If you go into UCAS and you search for a course, I've used the example here of veterinary physiotherapy again. In some limited cases, you can also apply directly to the college or the university. So it's worth sometimes contacting, if you're absolutely certain you want to go to that place, contacting them and ask them, do you know, would you consider a direct entry, or do I have to apply via UCAS? Like I said, the majority of higher education institutions in England would expect you to apply via UCAS. They have changed, UCAS have changed their process slightly for next year's application cycle in terms of the personal statement, but overall it's pretty much the same as it has been in previous years. Students will be asked to enter their personal details, their education history, any employment, relevant employment or employment, so what they are doing while they're studying, and then they have to enter their choices of courses. All students get 5 choices. There are some exceptions there if you're applying for pure medicine or vet medicine, which they can attach to their one single application. And this is important. So you get one application and you add your choices there. So this is where the personal statement becomes really important and sometimes also problematic, because if a student's not sure what they want to apply for, and they maybe choose something between animal behaviour and then zoology and then maybe vet nursing, their personal statement needs to be tailored to demonstrate for all those choices, because if somebody reads that, they're going, hang on a minute, but they've applied for nursing but don't mention nursing. But there are ways and means you can get around that. So using the example is almost the most straightforward example, because it's clear what you're going to do with that degree at the end of it. So you should tailor your statement to demonstrate your ambition and passion for pursuing this career and what you've done up to this point in time about what we'd like to call supracurricular activities to broaden your knowledge of the veterinary nursing industry, for example. So some students do shadowing or volunteering, a veterinary practice or a vet physio. So you can use that to demonstrate how committed you are to the industry and what you've done in your kind of formative years to enter into that industry. Or some learners have done like an additional qualification, whether or not that is a animal health and safety certificate, for example, or they've taken part in a debating society which have canvassed for animal rights or a neutering project. Those are all good examples to include within that personal statement, demonstrating what you've done around simply just going to college or to school to get you into university. Moving on to references, UCAS asks for a reference also, so that, you know, those things on the screen, your personal statement, and then a reference from your academic tutor. And it's really important that the tutor knows the student who makes the statement. And again, I'm sure careers advisors knows this, but if a student's personal statement is slightly weak, universities will rely really a lot on what the reference says about that student, about their academic ability, their aptitude for learning, and those kind of things. So it's really important to have a good rapport between the learner and the person who's actually writing their reference on UCAS. A typical cycle within UCAS usually opens in September for the next following year's academic cycle, and the equal considerations deadline is typically in the middle towards the end of January. But most universities and colleges in England will accept what we call late applications. It just means that they don't have to consider application if it's past the deadline, but it doesn't mean that they won't consider it. So we always encourage learners, if you haven't applied yet, and we're now in March, there's still time to apply for this September 2025 intake. So just if you haven't sort of thinking, if you only just started thinking about applying and maybe considering England as a study option, there's still time to apply. It's never too late. And also a lot of movement happens between offers and students during clearing, which typically opens in August. So even then, it's not too late to think, actually, do you know what? Considering where I'm at this point in time, I might want to go and study in England. So again, you can advise learners to apply quite late still during the UCAS cycle. There are, again, exemptions in terms of going to Oxford or Cambridge, which closes much earlier. But for the purpose of today, if you're thinking about land-based, a lot of institutions will consider late applications. So please do encourage students to apply. So yeah, like I said, the important thing is to apply and make an informed decision about where they want to study. Is it easy to get to, especially if you're coming from Ireland? Can I get accommodation packages? And what is the most attractive option? What will get you towards your end goal? I can go on all day about UCAS, but we don't have much time, so I will move on to next steps for students. Again, if there are any questions, just pop them into the Q&A box. So I have covered quite a lot of ground here, and I know the time is probably not helpful in terms of going straight into a lot of those niggly bits. I know there's always a lot of questions around UCAS applications. Hopefully I've covered some of that. But in terms of next steps for students, specifically those looking to go into land and environmental based curriculums or careers, we have Plumpton College is offering a webinar specifically for students next week on the 13th of March at 6 o'clock in the evening. So do encourage them to come to that one. And we have quite a lot on our website and under Plumpton College calendar of events, what's coming up if people are in the vicinity and want to come into one of our on-campus open events. We also do a range more of webinars. We have an exciting wine webinar on the 1st of April coming up. And then we also attend a lot of UCAS fairs. Probably the closest one would be Newport in Wales, but we'll also be in Dublin at the Times Higher Options Fair in September. So we do encourage all careers advisors to come and speak to us at that fair in Dublin in September. And if you have any questions then and that you don't want to ask today, our contact details is heoffers@plumpton.ac.uk, or you can pop in a more general query to inquiries@plumpton.ac.uk. So hopefully, in a nutshell, I have covered quite a lot of ground, but given you a flavour of, the options available, and it's not just your straightforward big universities. I know they can be very attractive, but there are other attractive options out there to consider. Hopefully that has given you a flavour, and like I have said, any questions you can pop those into the Q&A box. So let me just see if there are any questions in there at the moment. Question relating to where do we find out which institutions offer land-based curriculum options. So like I said, it's not just your big universities. Probably a good place to start would be UCAS. If you go into UCAS, you can search either by subject. So you can try generic subjects. If I use wine production as an example, you simply type in wine production and it will give you a list of universities, including colleges, which offer regulated degree pathways within wine production, viticulture and oenology. Similarly, veterinary physiotherapy, you can type that in and you'll see often if it doesn't say university or it says university centre or college, that means it's most likely validated by a bigger university, which gives your students that better option in terms of recognition elsewhere. You'll see there's a plethora of places that offer animal behaviour and welfare, including ourselves at Plumpton College. We offer applied animal behaviour and conservation. So there's a biodiversity element in there, species monitoring and looking after in captivity. So there's a lot of different options in terms of, you can either just put in, you can look at the What Uni Guide, is another useful option. UCAS What Uni Guide, Complete University Guide as well, gives you a lot of options in terms of where to study. And my top tip for students often is in terms of, look what it is you want to become and trace that back in terms of what course will get me to that career pathway. Some of it is quite straightforward, like I've used the example of veterinary nursing quite a bit. If you know you want to become a veterinary nurse, then of course you need to study a veterinary nursing degree. So that's quite straightforward. But if you're not 100% sure, perhaps you want to become an ecologist or an animal conservationist, then you can look into animal behaviour conservation pathways, zoology pathways. It really depends on what you want to do. We also offer business and management studies in terms of agri industries, so specifically into wine trade, import, export. So, if you're not entirely sure, there are those options, more broader land-based curriculum as well. If there are no further questions, then I will stop just having a look. There are no further questions, then I will stop the webinar here. Thank you so much for your time today, and any questions, please reach out to us through our contact details over there, and encourage your students to attend next week's webinar. Thank you so much for your time, and have a lovely afternoon.